Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to High Strangeness. Hey, everybody out there. If I told you there was a place that was bumped up right against Canada, surrounded by 3 massive lakes, like 80,000 square miles of lakes, and like 97 plus thousand square miles of land, would you think that's a prime spot for UAP sightings? Maybe, but how would we find out? Well, by asking the state director of MUFON for Michigan. And that's who we have on the show with us today, Bill Konkolesky. Did I say it right? Yeah, yep. Konkolesky. Oh, man, I'm bad at this. Well, Bill, thanks so much for being on here with us today. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, dynamite. And yourself?
I'm doing really good. Have you been spared the craziness of this weather?
No.
No?
No, I shoveled right before we got on here. So,
yeah. And for everybody out there, we're talking at the very beginning of February, just after all this big, crazy snowstorm went through. So what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I was talking to the state director of Missouri yesterday, and I asked her if she got it as bad as we did in Michigan, and no, she got it much worse. So
really?
I actually felt blessed after talking to her. Yeah, we didn't get it nearly as bad as Missouri.
That's crazy. Well, so I'm talking to you from Utah, and, this is skiing, everything out here, right? We've got 50-degree weather, sunny skies. Where's the snow? I don't even know. It's crazy. It's bizarre. So, well, Bill, how's been your holidays in 2026 so far? Good?
Yeah, it just feels like yesterday it was 2025, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually flipping the calendar month already. Every time that I do that, it feels like a big surprise. That time flies so fast.
Yeah, for sure. And where in Michigan are you at?
I'm in Clawson, which is a smallish subdivision just north of Detroit.
Okay, right on. Well, I think we are living in a very interesting time. Just, a few years ago, the whole UAP thing became more real. Not to some of us, but to the masses, right? Because more people are hearing about it because of the hearings and different things that have happened. Now, it's not moving as quickly as I would like to see it go, but what are your thoughts about some of that? I mean, are you happy to see some of that going on right now?
Yeah, definitely. MUFON being a grassroots group and of grassroots investigators and hearing from people on the street, their sightings and their cases. I joined MUFON in '93, so I've been at it a long time. And, very quickly you realize you don't need the government or military or big science to validate that something unusual is happening, something anomalous, unexplainable. We're not alone. But it is helpful sort of in the background to have that support now that the Pentagon is dumping millions into UFO research. All these elected officials are looking into the phenomena, and that NASA a few years ago put on a 4-hour press conference talking about all the different tools and toys that they have to look for strange things in the sky. So that has eroded a lot of the giggle factor and the things that science rolls out with that, we're one of 2 trillion galaxies. They're finding potentially habitable worlds all over the place. Because I remember when I used to watch Larry King Live many years ago, there would be some ufologists on there, like the late Stan Friedman, and he's saying, look, they're here, and they would have some scientists there to sort of provide a challenge to that, for a balanced show, and they would say, look, we don't even know if there's other planets out there. So, the goalpost keeps moving, and it just, Well, that is true too, but I think I used the wrong analogy there. But I mean, progress is the chains are moving too, and so
Yeah.
progress is being made, and it just makes things gradually easier to have conversations with folks who normally don't talk about this sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And it's interesting to me with science, the way some of these people out there, are becoming more open to this. But there are individuals who are still pretty firm that, it can't be this, that, and the other thing. And that's discouraging to me because isn't science all about opening your mind and looking at what's in front of you? And I feel like in a lot of ways, sometimes people in that space are just close-minded to it. And it's how do we grow? How do we improve science and stuff like that if they just silo all of this and don't allow themselves to see it?
And I do understand, certainly to a great degree, that somebody who is an adult, they never really got into this subject as a kid. And now they're living their life. They have their belief system. They have their life goals. They have everything all neat and tidy in their head. And then you go up and you throw this curveball at them. And
Yeah.
It's like almost like Inception. It's this tiny little thing that you put in their head that would grow to disrupt everything. But they quarantine it because they're like, well, until the UFO lands on the White House lawn, it doesn't affect my life one way or the other. So I'm just not even going to think about it. I'm not even going to take that luxury to question whether or not something else is going on out there because it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. And until it does, I'm just not going to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that because people, especially more and more people, are so tied up in just trying to make a living, two people, a husband and wife working, different things like that. People are busy. And it's tough to really do much other than kick back and grab a beer or watch a ball game or something like that. Then you got to do the same thing again tomorrow. So I get it. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. But with more people listening, I think it's good. I like to see that. I know in my social circles, I see people a little bit more like, well, what's going on with this again? And, they're opening their mind to it. So I think that's important. We're getting there. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you mentioned that you'd been part of MUFON since how long?
93, so
93.
32 years, I think that makes it.
It's a while, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What got you into it? Like, what was the thing that made you say, this is worth my time, I'm going to go do it?
So, in 1989, I was a high school senior at the time, and me and a couple friends, we were in Sterling Heights, Michigan, which is just another northern suburb of Detroit. Me and these two friends were sitting in my buddy's Chevette and waiting for another friend to get off of work. February, dark, 9 o'clock, sitting in the car, when this blue ball of light about the size of a car, about the height of 2 telephone poles, slowly drifted over the car. And we all just watched it go overhead. And then a white ball of light came and zigzagged all over the sky really rapidly. And then that disappeared. And then a red ball of light appeared in the middle of the sky, grew to about the size of the full moon, which is quite large, right? Mm-hmm. And then shrank and disappeared. And we didn't know who to tell. One of my friends said, hey, we should tell the police. I'm like, yeah, we're a bunch of high school seniors. Let's tell them we saw a UFO, see how that goes. And then my other friend said, well, maybe we shouldn't tell the police, but we live close to an Air National Guard base in Michigan, Selfridge. And they're like, maybe we should tell them. I'm like, okay, so you're not going to tell the police, but you're going to tell the military? So we didn't know who to tell. And I'll add just a little bit extra of the details because I could really actually go on about this sighting. But the next day I went into work and I went up to my coworker and said, hey, you'll never guess what I saw last night. And she's like, oh, did you see the UFO? I was like, I'm like, that's not the response I expected. And she said the maintenance man had actually seen something the previous night. So I go up to him and I say, "Hey, I heard you saw something last night?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw this blue ball of light slowly coming down the street where he lived." I was like, "Wow."
Wow.
And so I didn't even think that there was a place to tell. I do talks quite a bit around Michigan, and so many people have not heard of MUFON. I hadn't heard of MUFON, and so while I was in college, a friend who lives in Chicago said, "Hey, there's this place in Chicago called the Center for UFO Studies. Maybe they would like to hear your report." So on a trip to Chicago, I was going anyway. I stopped by and spoke to Dr. Mark Rodiger, and I told him my story. And he's like, "That's really interesting." He's like, "Did you tell your state MUFON chapter?" I'm like, "MUFON, what's that?" So he gave me the contact information for the state director of Michigan at the time. Shirley Coyne was her name. And so I told her of my sighting, and I was really impressed. Instant respect, no, like, come on, that sounds too weird or anything like that. Or, I don't know. It really impressed me. And I'm like, can I stick around? And
Nice.
so that's what got me in, is the short version of that story.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and as you're talking about that, I'm envisioning Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when Dreyfus is on the side of the road and all those things are flying by. Well, I think that's it's a cool way to go, wait a minute, there are some people here that are listening to this. So do you now, with all that you've been doing with MUFON, are you an investigator by nature? Is this the second half of you, right? Like, do you do something completely different, but this fulfills this other part of you? Or are you naturally an investigator or something like that, an auditor or something like that?
Oh, you mean like my day job that actually pays?
Yeah.
So, I work at Oakland Community College, and I am the academic testing coordinator. And yeah, one of my functions is to investigate ways that students are academically dishonest on tests, and to make sure that that's prevented, and coach and counsel students who have done so or might be interested in ways to, look at college more earnestly. The job entails all sorts of things, but that's one of the ways. Whenever I put on my investigator cap in my job, it's typically to try to stop cheating. And it's not like it's rampant or anything. They're good kids, and whatever. Just every once in a while, you got to make sure that everybody's on track.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, you'll get somebody here and there that likes to push it. But yeah, I'm curious. I've talked to different people, and some people, it's a completely alter ego in a way, from their normal daily life to this, and they love that, that contrast. So that's why I ask. I think
They go home, put on the Batman suit, and do their thing. Yeah.
Now, okay, so in Michigan there, what is, I'm bringing this up because you're right. I still find people that don't know what MUFON is. And it's really interesting to me that that's the case. But as a MUFON investigator, somebody might listen to this and go, oh, okay, there's an organization. Well, what does a day in the life of an investigator look like? So what is a typical month for you guys? I mean, like, are you seeing a lot of cases? Just what's it look like for somebody who's completely unfamiliar with what an investigator might do?
Okay, so the primary way we collect reports is through our website. And so somebody sees something in the sky that they can't explain. They hop on the internet. We are, again, a grassroots group. There have been some upstarts into the space that have dumped a lot of money to get higher rankings in search engines. But, I mean, the organization's been around since 1969. There's nothing like us at all in terms of investigation. So somebody reports their sighting to us, and it gets funneled through MUFON.com to the state level, and primarily it's the chief investigator for the state, which I am not the chief investigator. That'd be a guy named Daniel Snow from Michigan, and he does then assign the investigation to one of our active field investigators. Michigan typically has about 6 at any given time actively investigating, and then so the investigator will look at the sighting report, do some preliminary research, often based upon what the person said, like is it was a sighting near an airport, was there any strange weather going on, any sort of meteor showers, the basic stuff, and then they'll go in and they'll typically email the person that made the report, possibly then have a phone conversation, and then we have a very robust sighting report form. And all of our investigators go through a pretty solid training. We're not just going to say, oh, you want to investigate UFOs? Here's some guy's phone number. Go to it. There's a long developed, thorough training to do this. And then so when we reach out to folks, about 90% of the time we can determine what it is with some certainty, what they saw. All sorts of aircraft are typically the culprit, but people also report Starlink satellites nowadays. Chinese or sky lanterns, whatever you call them, are a big thing. Drones, of course, all sorts of things. And we stop at the water's edge when we can identify it. So we don't say, this doesn't seem to be anything else that we can identify, so it must be Arcturians, or something like that. We're like, we can't identify it, so we can't identify it. And Michigan alone gets in about 200 sightings a year for Michigan MUFON, and
wow,
and states the mileage will vary. I wouldn't be able to name any other states' traffic offhand, but that means that we get about 1 or 2 a week. And so if we can identify about 90% of what comes in, that means out of 200 sightings, that means there's about 20 sightings every year that we can't identify. And that's, the good stuff, the interesting stuff that keeps us going.
Hey there, Strange Nation. Have you subscribed already? If not, please help us by doing that now. Thanks, and let's get back to the show. Well, and I think that's cool. Like some people might say, oh, 10%. Well, I think that shows what you guys are doing. You guys are able to screen out things that most people will probably interpret as UAP, but really there's something else, like satellite and things like that. But but at least 10% are interesting.
Mm-hmm. And what use would we be if we thought everything was anomalous?
Right. Yeah.
We're not here to validate anybody's sighting. We're here to investigate. And if it's really strange, then it's really strange, and we admit that. Yeah. And
with MUFON, I understand you guys have there is a reach that goes international too, doesn't it?
Sure. We're in currently, if I understand the numbers correctly, we have over 5,000 members in over 40 countries. Our biggest footprint's in the United States, maybe not surprisingly, but other countries tend to have their own homegrown UFO investigation groups. But MUFON is in a lot of other countries too, and so in our database currently we have over 100,000 sightings that we've investigated, and prior to 2000 everything was done on paper. And then from 2000 to 2010, we had our original database. Then from 2010 forward, we had the next generation, and we're about to roll out yet another new one for 2026. And so, we're always advancing. And whenever we improve our technical stuff, we get more sighting reports. So I imagine we're going to get a bump, too, from this when we improve our database and reporting form again.
Well, and with more technology, probably allows you to see commonalities from different locations at some point, if not with this next version, right? Which I think super valuable. I had talked to somebody recently who there was some branding that was done on a abductee, and somehow they were able to determine there were several others in the country with the same branding. So, it's those types of things that's pretty powerful when you're able to reach out and see common threads like that.
Yeah, if I could, or
Yeah,
if you have a
please.
question, go ahead. But otherwise, I could jump in with one that really, a case that I investigated that really got to me, and that had that sort
Yeah.
of correlation. In 2005, wow, this is going back 20 years now, but I was driving and I got a call from a gentleman, and he was very unsettled. His voice, you could tell he was deeply upset about what he had seen. It had really affected him. And then he admitted that he was talking about something that he'd seen 6 months earlier. So he waited 6 months to try to find someone, then found MUFON, then called. And so a half a year later, he's still like visibly upset, well, audibly upset. And then when I went to see him at his home, very clearly, visibly upset. And he had 2 days of sightings. He lived in Highland Township, Michigan, not too far off from the Detroit area again, in southeast Michigan. And so it was about 10 p.m. It was a Friday night. It was September 29th, 2004. He's driving home, and he's on a road that's got big trees on either side. It's a narrow-ish road. It's a winding road. And as he comes around the curve, he suddenly finds himself under what he said was a massive black triangle just hovering in the sky. He says he knows it was solid because he didn't see the stars behind it. The object had white lights on the vertices and a big red light in the center, but otherwise it was just sort of black. And no noise, no motion, it just hovered there. And when I asked what he meant by massive, he said that it was about the size of a sports stadium. And I was like, wow, that's pretty big. And so he didn't want any part of that. He floored it. He went home and had a panic attack. And that's what he said. And so the next day, in the afternoon, he's taking a nap. He gets up about 3 p.m., looks out his bedroom window. He's on the second floor of his home, and sees what he thinks is a car at first, driving over the tops of the trees. And when he takes a closer look, he's like, oh my gosh, it doesn't have any tires on it. It's just floating over the trees. He said it was moving about the speed of a car and had you could see 3 little portholes on it, and it was black and it was wedge-shaped. And he watched it until he couldn't see it. It was at the edge of his property. He watched it until he couldn't see it anymore. And then when he was able to compose himself, he went downstairs into his kitchen, looked out the window, and there it was parked in his backyard. And so then, you don't have to be a trained investigator to understand the first few questions that you would ask somebody. Did you take a picture of it? And he's like, no. He's like, I didn't want to think I had a weapon in my hand. He goes, after it was there for about 10 minutes, he goes, I started to wonder if it couldn't leave, like it was stuck somehow. And then so I was like, okay, did you call anybody? And he's like, no, what if I felt it could detect my transmission, and if it knew I was calling for backup, I'd be in trouble. So I said, okay, so what did you do? He's like, I sat on my couch and watched it for an hour. And then he said he could see inside the portholes that there was a red light inside, and every once in a while he said it looked foggy or smoky inside, and every once in a while he could detect motion. And then after he drew a sketch on a napkin, and he gave that to me, but he drew a sketch on the napkin at the time. That's all he did besides just watching this thing. And so then after an hour, it starts to levitate, and then cocks at about a 45-degree angle, flies out through the trees, and disappears. So then I said, okay, if it landed in your backyard and it was there for an hour, there might be some depressions we can look at. And so I looked out the window, and it was March and snowy. There was about 2 feet of snow in the backyard. So I'm like, okay, how about I come back in May? I'll come back in a couple months and see, and he's like, nope, this is your problem now. That's how he said it. He's like, this is your problem now. He's like, when you walk out the door, I'm not going to think about this ever again. This is yours. He was like exercising it and dumping it on us so that he could try to forget about it. And
Yeah.
so that was it. That was the last time I'd ever spoke to the gentleman. Unfortunately, he passed about 8 months after the visit. And so we did not, I mean, because sometimes when witnesses say, I'm sort of through with thinking about this, then they maybe reconsider and reach back out to us. But of course, not in this case. But a few years later, I'm at, is 2008, at one of our in-person Michigan meetings. And this truck driver comes in and he says, hey, I want to show you some sketches of something I saw when I was down in Oklahoma. And he brings out these papers, and I'll be darned, it is the exact same thing, that very unique shape with 3 portholes that guy said landed in his backyard. And I had seen nothing else, heard nothing else quite like this. And then this guy just comes with all of these sketches. He said that it was late at night, about 10 o'clock. He was driving, and when the expressway turned, he said the object pulled up alongside him and was pacing him. And when he had to turn because the expressway turned, the object continued to fly straight, and that's how he lost sight of it. But I got chills just looking at it. And yeah, that was that corroboration. That was that thing like, here's something nobody ever reported that I know of before. And in fact, I haven't heard of it since. But then another witness who did not know of that original sighting surprised me by having something very similar.
That's pretty powerful. I mean, yeah, that is one of those situations where you go, whoa, like what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. My gosh, and as you're describing the situation with the first gentleman, I'm thinking he was just paralyzed by fear. Like he was,
Yep.
just thinking of all the different ways that any activity would cause him more problem with this. Oh, I can't call anybody. I can't do this. Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get people reporting some of these things, are they pretty troubled and shaken? I mean, I'm sure there's probably a wide variety of different responses, but this has got to be jarring for some people.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. And it's funny when you listen to a voicemail or you pick up the phone and actually let the person start talking. Often within the first few seconds, you can tell what kind of sighting they had. If someone says, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this, that means they probably saw a light in the distance do a 90-degree turn. But if they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you picked up the phone, then you're in for something. There was another one where when I woke up, this was the summer of 23, so this is just a few years ago. There was a voicemail, and the only thing that the caller said was, call me. No, that was it. And sometimes, like, when somebody leaves a voicemail, they'll be like, I was going to the store with my sister, and she was in there at the store for too long. I was waiting out in the car, and then I saw these flashing light off in the distance, and then she came out, and then we decided to follow it, and then we saw these different colored lights going back and forth across the street, and then when we tried to follow, blah, 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 blah. And then you get this guy, call me. And so I did. I called him back, and he told me this really weird story. He was driving to work. He worked a shift that was about 4 a.m. to noon. And he was on this dark road in Linden, Michigan. And as he's driving this road, he knows, because he drives it every day and how dark it is, he sees something very unusual. Very bright lights up ahead and to the left. The kind of bright lights that are often compared to like construction work when they're working through the night and they have these massive spotlights. It was super bright in an area that's semi-rural, usually completely black. And so he's driving, he slows down as he approaches it, and what he sees is this silver monolith about human-sized, and there are these 4 white basketball-sized globes sort of just floating around it, almost like buzzing bugs around this thing. And so he decides he doesn't want to have anything to do with that. And as he continues to drive, he said an orange teardrop shaped giant light then shifted out onto the road behind him, almost like saying, "Don't come back, just keep going."
Wow.
And he drives to work, and he gets off about noon. He's driving back down the road, and he remembers exactly where it was that he had seen this. And he slows down again and looks over, and there's about a 30-foot patch of dead grass there. He notices.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he called me, I'm like, "You saw this just yesterday?" So me and two other investigators went out immediately, and we got all of our plastic bags and took soil samples, waded out into this area, which was a little swampy, and the witness is out there with us, and we're collecting our control samples and different areas within this dead grass. And then we sent it to the lab that MUFON had to look at this. At the time, it was in Missouri. And they said that the grass had been killed. They detected a chemical in the grass and the soil, but they could identify it. And they said it's not an unusual chemical. I don't remember the fine details of it, pardon at the moment, but essentially it looked like just somebody dumped a bunch of chemicals there. Not that it was unusual, extraterrestrial, what have you. And the other weird thing is when I was looking at my photographs that I had taken, I'm like, not only was it a big patch of dead grass, but there was fresh grass growing through it, meaning that this didn't just happen. This had happened a while ago. And so the witness to me was very credible. And he went to great lengths to tell his story and bring us out to the area. I mean, if it was a hoax, he went through a lot of work with no return. And so that doesn't exactly resolve things, because it now appears, to take him as his account is credible, that what he witnessed, that the monolith and the lights shows a spot where there was a chemical spill to land or exhibit itself, or materialize, whatever the case is. They were somehow drawn to that spot. And I don't fault him, like some people will say, "Well, you would have seen that patch of dead grass before." I'm like, no, not really. It was just a little bit outside, off the side of the road. And if it was uninteresting, if he's not looking at it in the complete darkness, which he wouldn't see anything, that's to be expected. And if he's on his way home from work and he's tired, he's not going to, look at stuff like that. So that was a weird one. And that was another one where the witness up front was just like, "Call me," So, yeah.
Yeah, that is. And the first thing I think of, I'm curious what your opinion is here, and I know it's speculating a little bit, but, when people think sightings, they're thinking something very spaceship looking. But so often there are these orbs and these other strange shapes. Like, what in the world is going on? That's the first thing I'm thinking, is like, this is just like bizarre land here. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, are they
I got another
physical things? Are these spiritual things? Are these a combination of things? I mean, what plasma? What is it? I mean, are you starting to feel like, okay, I'm categorizing these, or are they just all over the place when you do some of these investigations?
Yeah, they can be all over the place, and some people who have a lot of experience throughout their life experiences, they will have a variety of experiences, which I think complicates things further. You're talking about unusual shapes. If I may throw in another really weird one, this happened in '97, and it was just south of the University of Michigan, which is also in southeastern Michigan. This couple, at the time, they drive to work together, and they're driving north on US 23 towards Ann Arbor, and they see this glinting thing in the sky. Something in the sky is highly reflective, but they're not sure what it is. And as they get closer, it looks triangular in shape. And then they get even closer, and the guy who called me said it was a pyramid. It wasn't a triangle. He said it was a pyramid in the sky that was so big that it covered both the north and southbound lanes of expressway traffic. And it was just hovering there over the road. He goes, one of the weirdest things is all sorts of people pulled over to look at it, but other people just kept driving as if nothing was there. And so him and his wife pull over, and they're standing with a group of people, which included a police officer, watching this thing. And he said that it had sort of a polished metal surface on it. Was a four-sided pyramid, and the bottom of it had two white lights at the bottom of it that looked like it was probably propulsion, and that the shiny metal sides of the pyramid appeared to have some sort of hieroglyphics written all over it. And then he said that as they were watching it, it was just hovering still, quiet over the road. And then he said then it suddenly like wrenched a little bit, like just jolted just slightly out of place, and then started spinning faster and faster and faster. And then he said it shot off, and he goes, within about 5 seconds, 2 jet fighters passed over.
What the heck?
Yeah, and what do you do with that, right? So,
Wow.
And my measure of credibility for this guy is that I was at the time between. I'll say this: he didn't call for 10 years. He called in 2007. Okay. And he talked about this, and he again seemed very credible. So I didn't learn about it at the time. I learned about it several years later, and it was at a time where I was turning in my existing cell phone, getting a new cell phone, and he when he called, and I turned in my cell phone, I thought I had lost his voicemail message. I'm like, oh no, I lost that guy's number, but it turned out it was saved, and I didn't know that for about 6 months. So I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because I really wanted to call this guy back. So I call him back out of the blue. He's not expecting me to call. And I said, hey, you called me about 6 months ago, and I'm calling you back about this. I'm like, can you just sort of, again, tell me what you saw? And he, without missing a beat, went through every exact detail with calm and certainty, just like he had left on the voicemail. Now, if he had made this story up, and I surprised him 6 months later, there would have been maybe some fine differences between his two stories. But no, he told it exactly as he left it on the voicemail. So that really impressed me.
Yeah, like it imprinted, the experience imprinted it in him in a way that it's just there. Yeah. Crazy. Another thing too, you guys have, I think this is called CRT. Is that correct? Your experiencer? No, ERT.
Yep, ERT,
yes. Yep. ERT, that's it. And is there, so there's your investigator, there's the ERT individuals or groups. Is there any other specialty in MUFON for investigators?
Yeah, we get into some pretty interesting areas for sure. Again, as I mentioned, I was talking to the Missouri State Director yesterday. Debbie Ziegelmeyer's her name, and she heads up the MUFON dive team. So if there's anything unusual underwater, they can send a dive team out and take a look at it. And she said, they haven't really, received that call like, oh my gosh, there's a UFO under the water, come, check out whatever. But, they are practice, and if anything should ever happen, we're on it. And to me, that's really impressive. That's something that I don't think you can get from anybody else. And we have photo, video, investigators. There's a lot of scientists within MUFON people don't realize, and with different specialties. For a while, we had a medical sort of adjunct to MUFON, which included the late Dr. Roger Lear, who could go in and remove people who said they had implants. And there's the great thing about MUFON is that when you join a group like this, you bring your talents to it, you bring yourself to it. And with so many members, so many people have different specialties that they can lend and jump in and help any investigation. And so I think that's a great thing. And one thing, I'm a company man, you could say, I've been around for a long time. And so I'm not going to say, bad things about MUFON, but, it's true that I pretty much only have good things to say about the organization. And so when people say, oh, MUFON is nothing but this or nothing but that, I don't like MUFON because they think this or think that, I don't think you can hang any sort of accusation on a group that is 100% grassroots and people bring their interests with them into, when they come in the door. We're a very diverse group of people with different interests and approaches and skills and things like that. So, I would say, if you don't like what you think MUFON is, bring yourself and make MUFON yours and, bring yourself to it. That's the best thing, for an organization like this. We're not rigid. We're very flexible and diverse.
Yeah. Each individual coming into this adds to it. And, when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, it's like somebody saying, I don't like that church or congregation because of that guy. Well, that's that guy. And then there's another guy and another girl, and they're all completely different people. And so, yeah, I'm sure that, especially with like ERT people, maybe you connect with this one, but not that one. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an example of a very diverse subgroup.
Yeah.
I am a member of ERT, though for many years people would, if they had these contact experiences, sort of seek me out outside of MUFON channels to share their stories. And so for decades, Michigan, has had a variety of different folks that get together and, as a support group, if you will, and, to talk about the subject. And, the whole, contact part of it is, to me, very real. I don't know how late into an interview like this I want to, say, surprise, but my very first memory in life is a little gray guy coming up to my crib.
Really?
What brought me into MUFON was indeed that high school sighting that I had. But yeah, I was 2 and I was in my crib and it was at night. I hadn't yet fallen asleep. And yeah, this little gray guy comes into my room and he's staring at me into the crib. And I scream for my parents and my mom says, go back to sleep. And I wasn't asleep and she never came, and after a few moments, the thing just walked out of my room. And that was my very first memory in life. And if that wasn't my first memory, my second oldest memory is almost falling into Niagara Falls. So my first memories in life are memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, those are ones that stuck out for sure, I bet. Yeah, so for you, have you had other types of experiences that are for you, you're an investigator, but for you, you just described a couple of things that you personally were like, okay, I remember those, they were odd and they're part of me now. Was there anything else like that you can recall?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. And so, knowing that the topic was Michigan sightings, I think we kind of steered into this, but yeah, I have 2 books that I've written all about my personal experiences. The phenomena doesn't stop. And even last night I saw a weird light in the sky that I can't explain, and I know what to look for. And so, yeah, it's with me. It's always been with me. And yeah, it runs quite a gamut. I have a scar on my arm from experience when I was 7. They pulled me out of body also when I was younger. I know this is a jarring shift in the stream of this conversation, but yeah, so a bunch of experiences in my teens and early 20s, and then it tended to sort of taper off after that, but never really fully went away.
Hi there. Does today's episode remind you of anything you or someone you know has experienced? If so, leave a comment. This community of listeners would love to hear all about it. Now let's get back to the show. Well, I think that's good, and thanks for sharing that. I think it's good for people to hear. I think like the one guy, right? He experienced something and he wanted to divorce himself from it and pretend almost that it didn't exist. But there's a way to be productive and exist with this, to understand it better and to move through. And so as an investigator, you've done that. You've said, okay, I'm not running from this. I'm looking at this and I have perspective because of some of the stuff I went through. So I think that's really interesting.
And a couple things. I wouldn't know myself without this in my life. A fellow person in the field, Sandy, said to me once, he goes, "Did you ever wish this never happened?" And I'm like, I don't know. I wouldn't recognize myself. And then, the other part of it is that if you've never experienced, and I include people who have close sightings, if you've never experienced this, the whole thing is theoretical. But if you have at least some experience knowing that some of the things out there are so strange that they can't be explained, then that is that perfect, I think, sort of balance point where, you're not going to dismiss everything out of hand, and yet you can be critical and look at things and say, this logically doesn't work out, or whatever the case might be. I think the most critical person, and when I say critical, I don't mean debunking, but I mean the person that can really look at things with the keenest eye, or somebody that knows that something's going on, and then therefore they're not always asking the question, is this real, but like case by case, what can be drawn from this sighting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious for you, has there ever been, and this can be an investigation or just a file or something that you've been made aware of, has there ever been anything that's been truly troubling that has shaken you in this space?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, the thing that comes to mind is that I'm aware of several instances, individuals where they've taken their animals or harmed their animals, like permanently taken the animal or harmed the animals that they have, even killing them, in some of these cases. And I think if that's what they're capable of, are some people also meeting that sort of level of harm and being disappeared by this phenomena. And, you always hear, the beings always bring you back, or the beings are benevolent, that sort of a thing. But, I don't always think that's the case. And, that's the part that always grips me is, and that could extend that whole idea to like cattle mutilation and things like that. Is that there's, sometimes, seemingly extreme disregard for a life.
Yeah. That would be troubling for sure. That's one of the things that I often think with just all kinds of phenomena. I feel like, in a way, we're in a zoo, and we are the ones being watched, right? We're the ones in a cage. We're the least powerful here. And there's all these things going on around us that really are observing us and just doing things. And we're like, we may not even matter. I don't know. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I feel sometimes when I look at that. Don't like that feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. I started talking about animals, and he shows up. You're okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. I'll protect you.
Oh, it's funny. Well, before we move any further away from it, you had mentioned you wrote a couple books, and I'd like for you to just tell us the name. Sounds like they can probably get it at Amazon. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Can you describe your couple books and what what it's about? Yeah.
Okay. So my first book, it came out, let me see, it was 2009. And it was the title of the book was Experiencer Raised in Two Worlds. And at that time, I wasn't seeing a lot of material on what it's like to grow up with this phenomena and question this phenomena as, like this happened to me when I was 2, 4, 7, 9, 10, into my teen years as I did. There was a lot of talk about, like, say you had like some of the great investigators like Bud Hopkins talking about when I investigated this childhood sighting or whatever. Now that has changed, and there's a lot of people's stories out there about growing up with the phenomena. But it was a unique angle for me, to share just that part of it. So the book goes from age 2 to about age 20. And then my second book picks up at that point and goes to about age 25. And I could have put them together as one volume, but they had different feels to them, different tones to them. The first one was about growing up, and the second one, Experiencer Two Worlds Collide, is what I call it, is I wanted to point out something that not a lot of people think about when they think about the abduction or experiencer phenomena, which is that the beings seem to take a very deep interest in people's otherwise seeming mundane lives. The people whom they'll marry, the place where they'll live, sometimes their career, people they'll meet in life, and their health choices. And it's you can't explain it with like an anecdote or two. You have to say, look at this 5 years of interesting encounters, messages, synchronicities, occurrences. These beings are very into the soap opera of our lives. Yeah. And so, a lot of times I think one of the services to the abduction phenomena is that people hear like a story. And like, for example, like Betty and Barney Hill, you know that one account where they were taken. Travis Walton, that one account. And I can't speak to them having a bigger bunch of experiences occurring, because in Travis's case, he doesn't claim to have anything else happen. But for Betty Hill, she does say other stuff happened. And it's a whole different thing when you see how you can use the word invasive these beings are. And you wonder, why on earth would they care about some of these things in my life? Why would they take such a deep interest? And I think it takes a while to patiently unpack, okay, here are, I'm going to tell you 20 things, and see if you can come up with a different conclusion than I do, which I can't have another conclusion than, again, that they're interested in our day-to-day lives, not just interested in saying, oh, there's one, get them, and taking them on board and doing an experiment and dropping them off. Good luck with your life kind of a thing. It's a very interesting relationship that you have with these. And no two people are the same. I know a lot of people who have very similar experiences to mine or each other, and then there's these things that are different, and sometimes very different. And then sometimes two people with very different experiences will intersect on a very specific thing that happened to both of them that isn't generally talked about publicly, and you're like, wow, that's interesting, because sounds to me like you guys have completely different stories except for this one, highly specific thing that you have in common. So
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Well, I really appreciate it. This has been great. I do have two more questions. And the first one is, do you think, okay, so as a MUFON investigator, there's this process that you go through. It's logical, I would think, and structured and systematic. Now I'm asking you as the person, right? Because there is going to be some speculation here, which may come from your investigations or not. So my feeling is, I'm wondering, do you think something has been communicated to you? Is there a reason for some of these people experiencing things, or even you, that you can go, some people say they're communicating this to me or whatever. Is there anything like that going on?
So the closest that I think I ever got to communication, the two examples I can think of was one time they expressed to me that I wasn't going along with the program, but they wouldn't tell me what the program was. I was just being very resistant to them, which isn't much of a message. Another time, they were very explicit in saying that this one girl that I was dating wasn't right for me. But I don't claim any sort of higher message that about saving the world, or experiencing some higher spirituality, or a lot of those type of messages. Now, I know that they're saying a lot to me that I can't remember, and I've been regressed a number of times, been unable to unlock that. And I know it's a fairly consistent thing for people in this space to say, they told me things. I know it has to do with some upcoming calamity, but I can't unlock it until the right time, that sort of a thing. And then, surprisingly, a lot of those individuals I know who've said stuff like this pass away. And so, if these beings are so prophetic that they're able to detect that something's going on, and that they need people to wake up one day that have been experienced and had this experience and go and do stuff, well, they're doing this to a lot of people who pass away, and life goes on without any said calamity. So I'll just give my opinion is that I think it's almost like an insurance policy that they have. I think they go around and put this message in just everybody they take. Like it's part of the checklist, check their blood, check their eyes, put an implant in them, tell them, what to do in case of emergency, that sort of a thing. And, I think they just tell everybody that they take this sort of message. And then when maybe said calamity happens, they'll be like, okay, who do we have on the playing field that we can call up and address this? And, so I think it's like that. I don't think I'm special in terms of anything that they've said. And I am not somebody who a lot of weird things happen to me for sure, but I'm not in that sort of spiritualist space where I think that I've been blessed by some galactic council telling me anything like that. I just sort of am a guy that has a normal life, and this weird stuff happens to me, and I try to figure it out. And, what I always say is there are two great mysteries that people face. Are we alone in the universe, and what happens to us after we die? And why not spend your time looking at one of those questions? I mean,
For sure.
Those are the big questions. So, yeah.
They are for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I think the other question I have is really, well, let me back up a minute. Like you had said some stuff about your experiences. I almost wonder if it was some of this to mold you. because it seemed like there was some disapproval on if somebody you were with, and then you feel like you wouldn't be you without some of these experiences. So maybe you've been molded in a direction to be something. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I do think they try to be life coaches to those folks that they take. But when I say they, in my experience, it's the little gray guys. But, to what end? I've seen lots of people live their lives and then pass away. And you say, well, what was that about? You almost wonder like that there's going to be some great magical moment where everything is going to snap into clarity and the world's going to change and everything. And people live their lives with this phenomena. They pass away. They pass it on to their children many times. They go through lives and they pass away. And, this molding process, to what end? To what end do they do this? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
True. Well, and my next and last question in this is, there's so much out there, and maybe your investigations and experience helps you see the higher probability of something. So everything from Galactic Federation to reptilians to grays to multiple entities that are governing and watching over us and helping us evolve to the next level or vibration. There are so many different things. Inner Earth, people believe that there's those living in the inner Earth. What do you think about all these different things? Like, there's so many different things out there. That's why I'm curious what you might think about some of this.
So something that I've been saying for many years, I think the real champion of this message is an investigator from Italy, Paulo Harris. And she said her big phrase that I think sums it up nicely is all of the above. Like, when asked, do you think they're time travelers? Do you think they're interdimensional? Do you think they're from another planet? And she will just say all of the above. Like, we don't have to take anything necessarily off the table. It's not that these phenomena are mutually exclusive or these possibilities are mutually exclusive. It's possible that all of them are true. In our galaxy, billions of years old, and with some of these, if we're talking about civilizations from other worlds, possibly other galaxies or interdimensional beings, you think there's a lot of time for all of that to have happened over time. And it's hard to say anything, to just say, no, that can't be true. It may all be true, including the whole angels and demons thing. Maybe that's true too. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. To me, it's all of the above is a great way to put that. I really do agree with that. And, it kind of takes me back to there's a nexus right here where all these things are going through and they're zipping past us and observing us and participating or taking us. It's interesting. It really is. Someday, maybe we will get more information and be able to lock some of this down. But in the meantime, we just got to check it out. I really think that's interesting. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for Bill for being with us today. If folks are in Michigan and they want to participate in MUFON, they want to participate in any meetings or anything like that, what's the best way for them to locate, find, reach out to you guys?
So MUFON.com is the best place to go if somebody has a sighting or if they want to become an investigator. We have a state chapter site, which is MI for Michigan, MUFON.org. So MIMUFON.org. And we have regular meetings. We had a Zoom meeting last night. We're going to have a Zoom meeting in March. And in May, we have sort of a mini conference. We call it our Swamp Gas UFO Conference. And we have 3 speakers in Troy, Michigan. You could go to either the Michigan MUFON site or swampgasufo.com to find out more about that. And one of the great things I think about an organization like this is that we're kind of a lodge too. Not quite the Odd Fellows or Moose or whatever, but we're our own quirky kind of lodge.
And it's funny because as I've gone to some meetings, I've seen people, it's interesting. They're quietly, shyfully approaching and visiting. They're listening. And then when they feel comfortable that, oh, I'm not going to be made fun of, then they open up. And I think that's amazing, because I do think there's a lot of people out there who probably feel alone. Probably feel like they can't tell anybody. Nobody's ever experienced what they're going through. And then they can run across other people in other scenarios that will help them see, okay, I'm not crazy. There's something here, and I did go through something. I think that's powerful for people. So
Yeah, right on.
Well, Bill, thank you very much. As we wrap up here, is there anything you want to say to the people out there about any of this?
I guess keep an open mind, watch the sky. If I'm supposing, kind of preaching to the choir, anybody who's listening to your program probably has those traits. But yeah, just understand that the folks around you. I like to sometimes think of people who don't have experiences as muggles, but the Harry Potter term. But just be patient with them. In the short 30 years or whatever that I've been in this field, there's been a tremendous sea change in credibility of this phenomena, and if it interests you, become an investigator.
For sure. Well, we were on a path, everybody. Where will it take us? But for everybody else, thank you for being with us. And remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.